Cedar Point is undoubtedly one of the best amusement parks in the world and is an absolute must visit for thrill seekers. This park has one of the most outstanding roller coaster collections of all time. But out of all of these roller coasters, which ones stand out above the rest? So in this video, I'm going to be ranking all of these coasters. And yes, Top Thrill Dragster will be on here. Unfortunately, I have not ridden Wicked Twister, so that will not be on this list. And without further ado, let's rank these roller coasters. Out of the 16 currently operating roller coasters, I've ridden all but one. And that one is Wilderness Run. But it's a kiddie coaster and there's nothing really special about it, so I'm gonna put it at the bottom of this list. However, they do have another kiddie coaster that I have ridden, and that is Woodstock Express, coming in at number 16. Like I said, it is a kiddie coaster, so there's not much to talk about here. But anyways, at number 15 we have Cedar Creek Mine Ride. It's just your everyday aero mine train. You know, you got a couple chain lifts and turns and drops, nothing really exciting, and it doesn't give you the smoothest ride. However, there are much better family coasters in the park, like Wild Mouse at number 14. This ride pleasantly shocked me. I think this is a very, very well done ride. There are so many surprises that I never would have expected that came with this, and we've never really seen a roller coaster like this. It's a Zamperla Wild Mouse, but it actually has a full layout. It starts out with those classic Wild Mouse hairpin turns that we all love and know, and then after that is actually a full-on layout with a bunch of turns and drops. It's well paced, and you're spinning from start to finish. This ride is also themed very well. Most of the cars are themed to mice, which are chasing the one car that looks like a cheese. And then there's the music going up the lift hill and the sound effects on the hairpin turns. Oh, and there's even like an unexpected cool controlled spin on the brakes. Might have ranked it low, but I love this ride so much for what it is. Alright, and moving on to number 13, we have Iron Dragon. This is also another really fun ride. It's an aero suspended swinging coaster, so in this layout there's a bunch of turns that make the car swing. It is also a very long layout, which I love. In the back row, on the drop off the second lift, there's an unexpected pop of airtime. Honestly, there's just nothing to dislike about this ride. Great family attraction for sure. Another great family attraction on a slightly larger scale is Gemini, snagging the number 12 spot. This is a pretty unique aero coaster. So you take the style of an aero mine train, and the layout is kind of like the OG Colossus at Six Flags Magic Mountain. You know, you got a couple elevated turnarounds, airtime hills, and it's all while dueling. This is one of the first hybrid coasters in the world, and the only one that consistently duels. This ride does have some fun pops of airtime, especially on the ends of the trains. Following the trend of aero is Corkscrew at number 11. I really did not think this ride was bad at all. Of course, it's not the smoothest coaster in the world, but it also wasn't absurdly rough. The pops of airtime that you get on it are pretty good, and it is pretty iconic to Cedar Point. Do appreciate aero as a whole though, and if you know me, I love aero roller coasters. This won't be the last time that you see aero on this list though, but moving on from aero for now, we have Raptor at number 10. Now I'm kind of disappointed that I had to rank it this low, but after my recent rides on it, it just wasn't as good as I was expecting. I did ride middle row, but I'm pretty sure that I rode in other rows at other times. I didn't really find this ride to be very forceful. Besides the mid-course brake run though, it does have some pretty decent pacing, and it is pretty fast. Last Helix does pull forces, but in my opinion, the forces should be a little bit more scattered around the layout. But there is another B&M in the park that I found to be more forceful, and this is where the list starts to get a little interesting, because I found my 9th favorite roller coaster at the park, Rugaru, to have more forces than Raptor. Before my most recent visit to Cedar Point, I was a Rugaru hater. The back row had a pretty decent rattle, so every time I would walk off with a minor headache, but all I needed to do was sit somewhere else for me to realize that it was good. So I sat up front and it was much better. And compared to Raptor, this ride actually has more forces, especially at the end of the first half and all the way through the second half. The layout is pretty fun too. But for that, I think this ride is very underrated. And I guess now we're following a trend of B&Ms, because number 8 is Val Raven. This is the park's B&M dive coaster, and it is very fun. The ride does have some pretty good forces and some nice elements. You can call this a GP magnet all you want, but it is very fun. I think any seat on this ride is good really. If you sit in the back, you get airtime going over the first drop, and sitting in the front you get that scary hang time, waiting in suspense to drop. So it's something that you can't really go wrong with. Like Gatekeeper, another B&M in the park, coming in at number 7, is my favorite favorite B&M in the park. It is one of Cedar Point's iconic roller coasters. Main reason being that this coaster goes over the entrance, with the two iconic keyholes that the track traverses through. Gatekeeper has a very fun layout to offer. That first drop is really good, especially on the left wing. If you're sitting towards the front, you get some really good hang time, and if you're sitting towards the back, you get whipped over the drop. The ride also has some nice inversions, and even an airtime hill. There are rides with better airtime hills in the park, like this next coaster, which might be an unpopular opinion, but just missing the top 5 is Blue Streak. This ride pleasantly surprised me. When I saw this ride, I thought it would be a pretty normal family wooden coaster, but underestimating this thing was a mistake. This ride is intense. There are two things that make this ride up: pacing and airtime. Blue Streak's pacing is amazing, rapidly throwing elements into your face. And when the train goes over those airtime hills, it is crazy. You somehow get strong, sustained airtime on these hills. You are bouncing around a lot on them because the ride is rough, but it's in the best way possible. Blue Streak is one hell of a sleeper hit. This ride was built in 1964 and still continues to operate to this day, which unfortunately the same thing cannot be said about the number 5 coaster, which is Top Thrill Dragster. This thing was absolutely incredible while it lasted. The ride only lasted 17 seconds, but it uses that time to its full potential. It had my favorite launch in the entire world. The top hat was absolute sensory overload. You'll be out of breath when you hit the brake. I have ridden King Dakar, which is the tallest coaster in the entire world, but I very much preferred Dragster. It's smoother, more comfortable, and has that amazing view of Lake Erie. But on the bright side, while this version of this coaster will very well be missed, it will be reopening as a reimagined ride experience in 2024 known as Top Thrill 2, which means I'll probably have to make another one of these videos and update my top 25. This roller coaster was the first to break the 400-foot barrier, and that is not the only height record that Cedar Point has broken on a roller coaster. They were also the first to break the 200-foot barrier with Magnum XL 200. Well, Moonsault Scramble was the first to have track that goes 200 feet high, but the entire train did not go 200 feet high. This coaster ranks at number 4, mainly because of its airtime. The first half is fun, but the second half has crazy triangle hills giving crazy ejector airtime. It is old, it is a bit janky, it is an arrow, but I still love this ride. Cedar Point was also the first to make a full circuit Giga Coaster. What the heck? Anyway, Cedar Point made the first full circuit coaster that reaches a height of 300 feet, which is Millennium Force, starting off the top 3. This ride does seem to have some mixed opinions, but I love this ride so much. Are you going to be slammed by strong, sustained forces? Not really. If you want that, you can go ride I-305. But is this ride a fun and fulfilled ride experience? Absolutely. Millennium Force does have a lot of turns. The first one slams you with good positive G-forces, and the rest are just there. But you are going so fast through that terrain. And that's part of why this ride is so good. This ride does have some airtime moments, and the best one is probably the first drop in the back row. And Millennium Force's drop is probably one of the best in the world. The drop gives you incredible sustained floater airtime, and it executes it in the best way possible, falling 300 feet back down to earth alongside Lake Erie. You feel like Superman going down that first drop. Pretty much all the airtime on this ride is floater, but it is sustained, and I love it. Also, this ride is very tall and sits right next to Lake Erie, and this ride is where you can get one of the best views of Lake Erie. While it is a really cool aspect that the coaster is really tall, it's not really about how tall it is, it's about how you use that height, which Maverick at number 2 demonstrates that very, very well. Maverick isn't as tall as some of the other thrill rides in the park, but the layout uses the stats to its full potential. The ride features a beyond vertical drop. It starts off with these tight switchback turns, giving good positives through the turns themselves and good whip on the transitions. Maverick does feature many fast and whippy transitions. There's also a couple pops of sustained ejector airtime. It uses linear synchronous motors to launch you 2 times throughout the layout, and 2 inversions. And if this isn't proving enough already, one of the inversions had to be removed because it was too intense. But the ride as it stands today is still very, very intense. The ride also does feature some nice landscaping with its rockwork and water. Overall, Maverick is an outstanding ride. but there is another ride that is more outstanding in my opinion. And of course, that ride is Steel Vengeance, taking the cake for the best roller coaster at Cedar Point. Steel Vengeance is a crazy airtime machine. Originally, this ride was a roller coaster called Mean Streak, and the popularity and ride experience have deteriorated, so then Rocky Mountain Construction came in and completely renovated the ride's layout. And now this ride stands as an absolute masterpiece with the most airtime moments on a single roller coaster. And this ride is absolutely wild. The first half is absolutely great. The first two Outer Bank hills give some amazing airtime, and there's even a couple inversions. There are a couple more moments of sustained ejector airtime, and it's amazing. The second half still has lots of airtime, but unfortunately it usually doesn't run at its full potential, so the second half is trimmed quite noticeably. And with those two halves of the ride combined, this is a very long ride. I will say that this layout is repetitive, but in the best way possible. In my opinion, there are some better coasters in the world, but this ride is undoubtedly elite. So that is how I personally rank the roller coasters at Cedar Point. I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts and opinions, so comment them down below. And if you like this video and want to see more content from me, make sure to like and subscribe. And I will see you all later.